In this video, we'll talk about an item that is often overlooked when discussing food preps. While many of us store rice, beans, and other staple foods, one item that is often overlooked and will be in extremely high demand is protein, namely animal protein. We'll discuss why having this is crucial, ways to store it, and how I personally stock this in my inventory, so stick around. Here's what we'll discuss in this video. Why animal protein will be important if the grid goes down. We'll explain why it will be hard to secure. We'll talk about options on the market to store it, and I'll share with you how I personally store animal protein. So let's jump in. The first question is, why will animal protein be important if the grid goes down? Protein is a critical macronutrient. Macronutrients are a type of food required in large amounts in your daily diet. The big three are protein, fats, and carbohydrates. If any one of these macronutrients is deprived in your daily diet, you'll begin to experience health problems. For preppers, rice and beans are a staple part of a long-term food storage, which provide many, but not all, of the essential amino acids needed by your body that are derived from the body breaking down protein, which is why animal products, which are a complete source of protein, are so important. For Americans, this will be a very difficult reality, as animal-based protein sources are a big part of our diet. The second point to consider is that animal-based protein will be hard to secure. After a prolonged grid down event and the supply trucks no longer are able to deliver supplies to your local grocery store, animals in your areas surrounding the city will be hunted to extinction. Between the knowledge that animal-based protein sources will be in high demand and the lack of availability when the grid goes down, the next question becomes, what are some ways to store this in advance? So here are some ways to store meat. On the affordable end of the spectrum, there are options to store meat that will store for a short period of time. You can make your own canned meat. You can buy canned meat. You can also buy or make dehydrated meat. Protein powder is also an option. And all these options typically have a short lifespan, roughly between 2 to 5 years, depending on how they're stored, and they also need to be rotated frequently. On the other end of the spectrum is a long-term option, but the price is much higher, buying freeze-dried protein. Companies like Mountain House sell number 10 cans with things like chicken and beef that simply need hot water added to them, but the price on these can also be very high. So this leads me to the final point of how I personally store animal protein. I personally freeze dry my own protein. This gives me full control of the types of proteins I choose to freeze dry. While getting into freeze drying does have an upfront cost of roughly around $2,000, this machine pays for itself over the course of several months, depending on how much food you freeze dry when compared to the costs associated with buying large amounts of freeze dried food. I'll walk you through some examples of protein I freeze dried just recently. So in this example, I've got some meat patties, some shredded chicken, and raw eggs. One of the hacks that I've learned with freeze drying is that if you load the trays with your food into a freezer and let them sit for 2 or 3 hours, it definitely speeds up the freeze drying process. So once you take these out of the machine, you'll notice, for example, the meat patties are almost rock hard. When you knock on them, you can hear kind of a hollow noise. With the meat, what I ended up doing, and I'll give you an example here, is I put it in some hot water for about 8 to 10 minutes and let it sit. And as soon as I take it out, you'll notice that it comes back to the consistency that it had before. It's no longer rock hard. It's easy to pull apart. It has the same smell, same texture as the original meat that I put into the machine. So what I decided to do is a simple experiment showing 2 different approaches of how you can rehydrate the raw eggs that I put into the machine. On the one hand, what I did is I just took some of the freeze-dried eggs and I didn't process them, didn't do anything, just stuck them in a little container here, and I'll put some hot water in just a second. Whereas the other part of the freeze-dried eggs I put into a food processor and broke it down into a fine powder. You'll see here in just a second how the two rehydrate in comparison. With the powdered freeze-dried eggs, as soon as I put hot water in them, they essentially came back to their original consistency, and I'll also in a second just show you actually cooking them. And as you can see, I just put some simple hot water and stirred them up. I don't have an exact ratio to give you of exactly how much water to put in. One of the things I'm learning with freeze-dried food is you just kind of play around with it, learn as you go. It's not going to be a perfect science, but it tastes really good no matter even if you mess up a little or put too much or too little. It still comes out really good. And with this batch that I actually ground down to a fine powder, I went ahead and cooked it. And as you can see, I put a little more hot water in it because I wasn't getting the exact texture that I wanted. But again, this is something I'm learning as I play around with this. After cooking it for several minutes, the taste and the smell, everything pretty much was the same as before. Overall, I would say that eggs are a little dry. I probably should have added more water to them. I just didn't put enough water in, but you learn as you go. They kind of remind me of McDonald's powdered eggs, or McDonald's eggs. I'm assuming they use powdered eggs on their food. Maybe they freeze dry as well. I don't know how they do it over at McDonald's. Overall though, tastes pretty good. Tastes like an egg, just a little different consistency. Again, I think it was a little off on the water mixture, but yeah, a little dry. But overall, if I were in a situation where I wanted some good protein, there wasn't much around, this would be an excellent source. So I let these sit in some hot water for a while, and the yolk, it never really absorbed the water. I guess I need to break it up a little. It was kind of a hard, solid object to begin with anyway. I think the powdered approach, once you take eggs out, is definitely going to be the way I go in the future. Or I'll just scramble them in advance and just add water to them. But these yolks didn't really reconstitute very well. They're still pretty much just solid disc. So there you have it. Hopefully you can see the value of having protein, specifically animal protein, in your diet. While there's a lot of options on the market, I found a particular approach that I like. Again, if you want to check out this freeze-dried machine that I showed in the video, I'll post a link in the description section below, along with a coupon for $50 off at checkout. If you have any questions, please post those in the comments section below. Click on the like button, share on social media, and as always, be safe out there.